or is it just an elective subject? So I customize. So this is how I do it, walking the talk. Take an example here, Thermodynamics 1, SME 1413. Who are my audience? First year students, mechanical engineering. This is an introductory course to thermodynamics. It's a core subject. You don't get 50 and above on this course, you cannot go to the next thermodynamics. So it is a core subject. And what are the teaching models that I'm going to use? I have used active learning, and this is during lectures and tutorials. And I have used cooperative learning as an introduction, yeah, to group work, to teamwork. Okay, I have to plan first. I'm a professional, I plan first. Okay, how do I plan for active learning? When do I do it? Which time? Week number 4. On what topic? This is a suitable topic. I select the topic that I want to use for active learning. And what do? I combine my lecture with the active learning strategies. And what are the strategies that I want to use? I want to use the think, pair, share method. And this is when the students have a pair with a partner, or in class, since there are 3 of them sitting in one row, I group them together in 3s. And then give them a problem. They discuss the ideas on setting up the problem. And then they would give a response to my questions. So which of the outcome am I addressing here? See, I never forget my learning outcome. And here, one of my learning outcomes says the students should be able to show the state and change and phase change process of pure substances on property diagrams based on property tables, equations, and charts. So how do I assess them? I give them empty outlines. It's just a table with perhaps pressure and temperature, and then they have to figure out, they have to discuss and figure out what is the state of the substance. Is it a compressed liquid? Is it a mixture? Is it superheated? And then that will be their assignment. Okay, so this is how I plan for my active learning. And later on, I would like to share with you a video of how I carried out this active learning. So even though this is just topic number 2, chapter 2, yeah, but I took a problem from chapter 3. So the students are like, why chapter 3? We haven't studied. It's okay. And then I would ask them to, okay, now I want you to look at this. Everybody has to bring a textbook to class. And then they will have to read up, pick one question, okay, read that problem. So quietly, nobody talk to each other, just read quietly, because I want to engage them in reading. Active learning is about engaging students. They listen to me, and then they have to read. So once they're finished reading, I give them time to finish reading. After they finish reading, and then they discuss. I engage them in discussion, right? And once they discuss, and what do they discuss? You have to guide them in the discussion. They have to discuss the strategies to solve the problem. And then once they have enough discussion, then they can start doing either individually or with their friends. And then once they are ready, I call upon someone to answer the question. Say, Wan Nazda, okay, can you tell me what are the assumptions that you have in this, for this problem? Now, if you just come to class and just ask someone a question, he will not be prepared. But if you give them time to discuss and think about it, and they will be willing to answer the question. So that's how I carry out active learning. And this is the model that Dr. Zaki mentioned earlier. Basically, I break up the active learning into 5 steps. First step is to preview using the topic learning outcomes and course learning outcomes. And usually in this step 1, I would perhaps start out with a recap of what we did yesterday. And sometimes I review back questions. I call them frequently asked questions based on their e-learning and on the SMSs they send me. Okay, and then only I start with the first half of lecture, and that's about 15 minutes. And then I start with the activity, and then continue with my lecture for another 15 minutes. Of course, the objective is to get them engaged by listening, reading, writing, discussing, and solve problems. Yeah, and These are the steps I've explained earlier. Step 1 will take about 5 minutes. Okay, and this is where I recap what we have learned and I answer questions being asked through the e-learning or through the SMS that I get. Step 2 is where I begin the lecture for 15 minutes. Step 3 is 10 minutes for the group activity. And I prepare a study guide for my student, and this is available in the e-learning. And continue with the second half of the lecture for 15 minutes. And the closure, this is when I assess what they have learned, what they understood, and what they did not understand about the lesson. And I call this session, I use this method, I call it the 2B paper. 2B, one for best, what they understood best, and one for blur, what they didn't understand. So just to give you an example, the first time I did this, I did not provide them with a proper card. Later on, I have improved. I gave them a proper card for them to write down what is best and what is blur. So you can see here, one of the students wrote here, dapat faham belajar heat engine, bagaimana transforming heat into work, and enjoyed listening about boilers. Okay, so I guess that came true. What was blurred to him was he did not understand how to calculate the Q, which was interesting because when I describe the steam power plant or the heat engine, I keep telling them that the boiler receives heat, but I never told them how to actually calculate that heat. I said, okay, next time I will remember this. And did not understand the process that went into the boilers. Yes, this has to do with the combustion as well. So this is my feedback, the feedback I get from the student. This is how I improve myself for the next class. And most importantly for tutorials, some people feel that tutorials are not important. Well, I feel otherwise. And I use the active learning and in the tutorial sessions. And this is how I do this. Tutorial session is a session where students solve problems. So, I mean, after 20 years of teaching, can you not come out with a problem-solving technique? Yeah? That breaks down the barriers to understanding problems. Okay? You show the students that the problems need not be terrifying, and with the right tools, one can approach and solve difficult problems. Now, the tools you have already taught them in the classroom. That's a tool. Now, in the tutorial, you teach them how to use the tools. Yeah? And then, you give them any problem, yeah? From any lecturers. Even I am thinking of taking question papers from other universities, thermodynamics problem being taught in other universities, and give them to my students and see whether they can solve it. Because you've taught them the right tools. You've showed them how to use it correctly. And so they should be able to solve any problem in thermodynamics. That shouldn't worry you. Okay? So, this is the one problem-solving technique that I found, that I adopted for my thermodynamics class. I break them into steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3, until at the end they have to have some discussion and conclusion. Now, initially, it takes time. So the students were doing, I make them write down step 1, step 2, they have to write down 1, 2, 3. I want to see the numbers in the tutorial classes. But as time goes on, by the end of the semester, this thing comes automatically. They don't have to write 1, 2, 3 anymore. But they go through the steps, and they can even skip some steps, because some of the steps are in their mind already. So by the time they finish the semester, these steps are automatically. And you give them any problem, they should be able to solve. Okay? So that is what I do in my tutorial class. And this is for the group project. Okay, and of course, the reason having group project, those of you who have practiced problem-based learning would probably appreciate this. You want to develop the teamwork skills, the culture of lifelong learning, the creative critical thinking, and the communication skills. Now, I approach this group project differently for different classes. If it's a first year class, it's different. If it's a final year class, the emphasis is different. But all the elements are there for both levels. So, how do you start? This is my plan. I plan. Okay. Start the first lecture. My first lecture will start with the virtual